I almost didn't go to London. That's the thing nobody tells you about grief, how it makes every decision feel like you're trying to lift a sofa by yourself. My sister had been gone 7 months. 7 months, and I still couldn't get the smell of the hospital out of my head. That particular kind of clean that isn't clean at all. That hum of machines being polite while things fell apart. My friend Dina booked the tickets. She said, "You're coming. Pack one bag. I don't care what's in it." And because I didn't have the energy to argue with Dina, nobody does, honestly, I packed one bag and I went. We landed on a Tuesday in early November. The sky over Heathrow was the color of an old dishcloth, stretched thin and gray in every direction. Not dramatic gray, not stormy, just tired looking. Like England itself had been up since 3 a.m. and hadn't found a reason to try. I thought, perfect, this is my weather. We took the tube into the city. Dina kept nudging me, pointing at things, the double-deckers, the black cabs, the weird, beautiful chaos of Piccadilly Circus, and I kept nodding, half present, 1 foot still in that hospital corridor 7 months back. She knew. She didn't say anything about it. That's the best thing Dina does. She knows when to talk, and when to just let you be in a city that doesn't know your name. We checked into the hotel near Victoria. Small room. 2 beds pushed too close together. A radiator that made sounds like it was having a private argument. I sat on the edge of the bed and thought about sleeping for 11 years. "We're going to Buckingham Palace," Dina said. "Not a suggestion. It's 4 in the afternoon. So we've been awake for 18 hours. The changing of the guard is tomorrow morning," she said. "But the palace is always there, and you need outside." I looked at her. She looked at me. I put my coat back on. Buckingham Palace in November is a different animal from the postcard version. No summer haze, no tourists in shorts, and sun hats pressing against the railings with ice creams dripping down their wrists. In November, the mall feels like the city exhaled and forgot to breathe back in. The plane trees are stripped bare. The flagstones are damp. The tourists are there. They're always there, but they're buttoned up, hands in pockets, breath coming out in small clouds, speaking in a dozen languages that all sound slightly hushed near the gates. Like nobody quite wants to be too loud in front of a palace. Like volume might be somehow rude. We crossed the Victoria Memorial roundabout. The memorial itself is massive, this gold-topped white marble thing rising out of the center of everything. And at its base, facing the palace, Queen Victoria sits carved in stone, looking like she is absolutely done with everyone's nonsense. I've seen the photos. The real thing is something else. It's heavy. You feel it in your chest a little. All that permanence. Dina was already at the railings, phone out, photographing everything. I hung back. There was a guard at the front. One of the famous ones, the tall black bearskin hat, the red coat, the rifle held at his side in that specific way that is somehow both ceremonial and not ceremonial at all. He was stationed in the sentry box to the left of the main gate. The wooden sentry box, painted black, with the royal cipher above the door. He wasn't moving. I mean, obviously. That's the whole thing. That's what they do. Stunt. Not move. Not react. Be still in a way that most human bodies actively resist. Every few minutes he'd do the slow march. Left, right, pivot, that precise count of steps, turn on a fixed heel, and come back. Mechanical in the most human way. You could see the breath. A group of tourists was clustered about 10 feet from him. One man, maybe 50, loud jacket, clearly American from the volume of his voice, was doing impressions, sticking his arms out straight, imitating the march. His family was laughing. He was grinning, waiting for the guard to break, to twitch, to give him something. The guard gave him nothing. I watched that. The man performing, the guard simply being, and something about the absolute stillness of the guard against the performance of the tourist, I don't know. It settled into me somewhere. The way a song does when you're not expecting it. We stayed for maybe 40 minutes. The light was going the way it does in November, not a sunset, exactly. More like the world dimming a rheostat. Slow and gray and final. The lampposts along the mall came on. The palace floodlights clicked to life and turned to stone that warm cream color that makes it look almost soft. Almost like something you could lean against. Dina bought us hot chocolates from a cart near the memorial. The paper cups were so hot it was almost impossible to hold them, but You held them anyway, because the warmth was worth the pain. Are you okay? She said. Yeah. You don't have to be. I know. I held the cup tighter. I'm not sure yet. She nodded. Drank her chocolate. Didn't push. We walked back slow, the palace getting smaller behind us. The guard still at his post, tiny now at this distance, a smear of red and black against the lit stone. I thought, that man has been standing in one place while everything happened. I didn't know then why that thought caught me like it did. I didn't know about the note yet. That was tomorrow. The next morning the alarm went off at 7. Outside, London was doing that thing where it pretends to be dark even though it's technically morning. The window was streaked with rain, thin and persistent. The radiator had lost its argument overnight and was silent in the corner. My breath wasn't fogging, barely, so not cold enough to be miserable, but cold enough to know you'd made a choice by getting up. Changing of the guard at 11, Dina said into her pillow. We have time. Then, why is the alarm at 7? Because I want a full English breakfast and a walk, and I want to be at the front of the crowd before the tourists who slept in get there. I lay there looking at the ceiling for a count of 10. Then I got up. We found a cafe on a side street off Victoria, the kind of place with handwritten menus on a chalkboard and tables that wobble slightly on one leg and tea served in mismatched mugs because the owner stopped caring about matching mugs sometime in 1987 and hasn't started again since. The kind of place that is unironically, uncomplicatedly itself. I ordered eggs and toast. Dina ordered everything. The cafe was warm and close. Someone's radio in the kitchen was playing something old. I couldn't name it, just felt it, that specific register of old pop music that sounds like somebody's parents dancing in a kitchen 30 years ago. The man at the next table was reading a newspaper, an actual physical newspaper, folded in half and held up near his face like a privacy screen. The window was fogged at the edges. I felt for the first time in 7 months the particular sensation of being somewhere. Not just being somewhere. Present. Locatable. I wrapped both hands around the mug. She would have loved this, I said. Dina looked up. She knew who I meant. She would have ordered the black pudding and then complained about it for an hour, Dina said. I laughed. Actual laugh. Out of nowhere. She really would have. We didn't say anything after that for a while. But it was a different kind of quiet than it had been for 7 months. Less like a room with the oxygen removed. More like the pause at the end of a sentence that wasn't finished yet. We got to the palace at 9:30. The crowd was already forming along the railings. Families, couples, solo travelers with proper cameras on straps, school groups in matching high-vis jackets. The school groups are their own ecosystem, controlled chaos, teachers with the look of people who have accepted their fate, and they migrate through tourist sites like a weather system, loud and colorful and carrying their own atmosphere. Dina maneuvered us to a good spot, 3rd row from the front along the left railing. Not perfect, but workable. You could see the sentry box from here, and the main gate, and the section of forecourt where the ceremony would unfold. The guard from last night wasn't there anymore. A different one. Same uniform. Same stillness. Same slow measured march. Left, right pivot. The bearskin hat made them look taller than they were. The red coat was a specific red, not bright, not candy. Something older. More serious. The crowd was restless. Happy restless, tourist restless, the shuffling and craning and toddler wrangling kind of restless. Someone's child directly behind me was explaining to their father in a very loud and very confident voice that the guards are robots, Dad. They have to be because a real person couldn't do that. The father, they're real people. The child, I don't think so. I almost turned around to tell the kid they were right in a way nobody would say out loud at a palace. And then I saw her. She was maybe 8 years old, maybe 9. Hard to tell. She was on the small side, wearing a bright yellow raincoat that was several sizes too big, the sleeves coming down over her hands, the hem nearly at her knees. She had dark hair pulled into 2 braids that weren't quite even, one slightly higher than the other, and she was holding a piece of paper folded into a small square. Holding it the way kids hold things they consider important. In both hands, carefully like it might change if she gripped too hard. She was standing with an older woman. Grandmother, probably, The kind of grandmother who moves deliberately, who carries herself with the patience of someone who has stopped rushing anywhere. They were near the railing, slightly down from us, the grandmother with her hands clasped in front of her, watching the guard with quiet attention. The girl was watching the guard differently. She wasn't looking at the uniform or the hat or the rifle. She was looking at his face, studying it the way kids study things they're genuinely trying to understand. Head slightly tilted, one braid hanging lower than the other, brow pulled in just slightly. The guard's face was still, not blank. Still. There's a difference. Blank is absence. Still is presence that has chosen not to move. His eyes were straight ahead. His jaw was set. His expression was the expression of someone who has made a decision about where they are and what they are doing and has committed to it entirely. The girl watched him like she was reading something. I don't know why I kept watching her, but I did. The changing of the guard ceremony starts the way most important things start, with sound arriving before the thing itself. First the music, distant then nearer, the band marching from Wellington Barracks, and there's something about a live military band that no recording ever gets right. The way the brass swells when it bounces off stone. The way the percussion sits in your ribcage. It's not subtle. It doesn't try to be. It says, this is a ceremony. You're watching a ceremony. Understand the weight of that. The crowd pressed forward. Phones went up. Children were hoisted on his shoulders. The old man with the newspaper-fold privacy screen was somehow now standing right next to us, newspaper abandoned, craning his neck with everybody else. The grandmother put one steady hand on the girl's shoulder so she wouldn't be jostled. The girl hadn't moved, still watching the guard in the sentry box, still holding the folded paper. I nudged Dina. Look at that kid. Dina looked. The yellow jacket? She's been holding that paper for 20 minutes. Dina watched for a second. Maybe it's a drawing. Maybe. We both watched. The grandmother leaned down and said something near the girl's ear. The girl shook her head, the uneven braids swinging. She said something back. The grandmother considered this, then nodded, stepped slightly aside, giving her room. Whatever the girl was waiting for, she was waiting for something. The ceremony moved. The new guard entered the forecourt. The old guard received them. There was the precision of exchange that has been repeated here for 300 years. Every movement memorized so deeply it lives below thought. The crowd oohed in that collective, unconscious way that happens when humans witness something they understand to be larger than their individual presence. The guard from the sentry box, the one the girl had been watching, was part of the outgoing detail, which meant he would be moving, which meant, at some point, he'd pass the railing. I realized the girl had figured this out. She shifted forward. The grandmother's hand moved to her elbow now, not holding, just there. The girl rose slightly on her toes inside her enormous yellow raincoat, paper gripped in both hands. The ceremony concluded. The incoming guard took their positions. The outgoing detail formed up and began their exit route along the inner forecourt toward the side gate, the route that would carry them along the inner edge of the railing, close, within a few feet of where we stood. The girl moved with her grandmother toward that section of railing. I followed a step behind. I don't know why. Something had hooked into me, and I was following it. The outgoing soldiers marched past in their column. Precise, unhurried, looking straight ahead. The crowd applauded, that scattered, relieved applause of people who have been standing in the cold for an hour and are releasing something. The girl pressed against the railing. The guard she'd been watching passed in the column, maybe 4 feet away on the other side of the iron bars. He was looking straight ahead. The bearskin hat made it difficult to read anything above the jaw. The jaw was set. He was within his column, within his duty, within the last 300 years of ceremony. He passed, and the girl, still holding the paper, still on her toes, she did something I wasn't expecting. She leaned through the railing gap as far as she could safely lean. She extended her arm. She said something. Not loud, not performing it for anyone around her. Just said it, in the direction of the guard's back. A sentence, maybe two, quiet enough that the crowd noise took most of it. And then she set the folded paper on the ground, just on the inside of the railing, just near where the guard's boot had been a moment before. The guard had kept walking. Of course he had. That is what they do. But the girl wasn't deflated by it. She pulled her arm back through the railing, and her face, I could see her face from where I wasn't disappointed. She'd done the thing she came to do. The outcome was, to her, apparently not the point. The grandmother put a hand on her head. The uneven braids. They stepped back from the railing together, and the crowd filled back in around the gap. I stood there looking at the piece of folded paper on the stone. It sat there on the inner side of the railing, small and white and slightly out of place on the old gray flagstone. The crowd was dispersing. The ceremony done, the collective energy breaking apart into individual plans, lunch, the gift shop, the tube. Within 2 minutes, there was space at the railing again. I don't know what made me do it. I've thought about this since, and I don't have a clean answer. Maybe because I've been thinking about weight for 7 months, the weight of loss, the weight of grief, the weight of things that don't get said in time. Maybe because there's something about a child's act of deliberate kindness that knocks something loose in adults who have forgotten that kindness can be simple and direct and not require an audience. Maybe I was just curious. I crouched down near the railing. The paper was just within reach through the lowest gap. I hooked one finger around it, pulled it toward me, looked around. Nobody was watching. Or if they were, nobody said anything. I unfolded it. The handwriting was a child's. Large, slightly irregular letters, some slightly bigger than others. The lowercase are written in the two-loop way they teach in schools, the K, with its legs slightly too wide. A purple felt-tip pen. She'd pressed hard enough that you could feel the impression on the back of the paper. 7 words. Thank you for existing. You matter a lot. Below it, in slightly smaller letters, from Priya, age 8. I read it twice. Then I stood up, and I found I needed to look at something that wasn't the paper, so I looked at the palace facade, the lit stone in the morning light, the flag above it. Thank you for existing. Not thank you for what you do. Not thank you for your service. Not any of the phrases that get said to people in uniform, which carry their own weight and their own history, but which are phrases adults have made for adults. This was something simpler, something underneath all of that. You matter. The fact that you exist matters. Said to a man who stands still for hours at a time in a bearskin hat in November rain, while people imitate him, photograph him, try to make him laugh, walk past him talking about lunch. Said by an 8-year-old who had, for reasons nobody around her had thought to ask, decided that this specific man needed to know that his existence was a gift. Not his performance, not his precision, not his ceremonial value. Him, existing, that being enough. I held the paper. Dina appeared at my elbow. What's that? I showed her. She read it. Read it again. Her mouth pressed together in the way it does when she is trying to keep her face still. Oh, she said. That was all. I folded the paper back along its original creases, exactly as the girl had folded it. I put it back on the stone inside the railing. Somebody on the palace staff would find it. Maybe they'd throw it away. Maybe someone would read it first. Maybe it would make it to the guard. Maybe not. The girl and her grandmother were somewhere in the dispersing crowd. The yellow raincoat, a brief flash of brightness before the crowd took it. Gone. I thought about the guard, marching back to the barracks now, rifle at his side, face still set in that particular way. Whatever he was carrying, and everyone carries something, that's the thing, everyone carries something, even when they look like pure ceremony. He was carrying it in silence, in discipline, in the trained quiet that the uniform asks of him. And somewhere on a stone inside a railing near the palace gate, an 8-year-old named Priya had left him a note in purple felt-tip pen. Thank you for existing. We walked back toward the mall. The plane trees, the damp flagstones, the Victoria Memorial, gold and white and heavy with its 300 years of meaning. I was quiet. Dina was quiet. We'd gotten good at quiet together in the last 7 months, but this was a different shape of it. At the base of the memorial, I stopped. She told him, I said. Dina looked at me. Priya. She told him he mattered. She didn't wait. She didn't think about whether he'd hear her, or whether the ceremony was over, or whether someone would think it was strange. I stopped. Tried again. She just said it, and left the note. Dina's jaw worked for a second. Yeah, I didn't do that. The words came out before I decided to say them. With my sister, toward the end, there were things I kept thinking I'd say them when she was better, when things were less intense. when there was more time, the mall in front of us, the empty space between the trees. I kept waiting, I said, for the right moment to tell her she mattered. Dina didn't say anything. She put her arm around me. Just that. We stood there for a while. The cold was proper now, the morning giving way to a November noon that had no interest in warming up. My breath came out in small clouds. An 8-year-old in an oversized yellow raincoat had walked up to a man behind iron railings on the other side of ceremony and protocol and 3 centuries of tradition and said, "You exist, and that is enough, and I needed you to know." No waiting, no right moment, just a note and the extended arm and the leaving. There's a specific kind of afternoon in London in November where the light turns amber for about 45 minutes before it goes dark, and everything, the stone buildings, the wet pavements, the red buses, glows for those 45 minutes like something from a painting of a place rather than a place itself. It doesn't last. It's not trying to. It just happens, and then it's gone, and the dark comes in blue and flat and total. We were in St. James's Park when that light arrived. Dina and I had ended up there the way you end up places in cities, not by deciding exactly, more by following a direction and finding yourself somewhere good. The park sits between the Palace and Whitehall, and in November the lake is gray and the pelicans are improbably present and the paths are half leaves, half wet stone. There were still people, joggers, dog walkers, a man sitting on a bench with a thermos, and the specific look of someone who comes to this bench every day, regardless of weather or season or the state of the world. We sat on another bench nearby. The amber light came. Everything went warm and false and gorgeous for 45 minutes. I had the folded piece of paper in my pocket. I picked it up again on the way out. I'm not sure why. I just couldn't leave it there. It felt like something that shouldn't be on a cold stone. It felt like something that should be warm. I held it now, turning it over in my hands. "Thank you for existing. You matter a lot." And below, from Priya, age 8. Purple felt tip. Hard-pressed. She'd wanted it to stay. Here's what I kept thinking about. Not Priya, exactly though her. And not the guard exactly though him. The thing I kept circling was the gap. The gap between the railing and the sentry box. The gap between ceremony and person. The gap between what we perform in public and what we are when the performance stops. The guard is trained, years of training, physical and mental, to maintain separation. Between himself and the crowd, between himself and provocation, between himself and the 1,000 small things people throw at him to see if he'll crack. The gap is part of the job. The gap is what the uniform means. And a child with uneven braids had leaned through the railing gap with a piece of paper and said, "I see through to you." Not the ceremony. You. I don't know if the note made it to him. I genuinely don't. I put it back inside the railing and walked away, and I'll never know. That's the honest version. But here's what I think. I think it doesn't matter if it made it. The act of writing it. The act of folding it. The act of getting up that morning. I found myself constructing Priya's morning in my head, lying in bed somewhere in London, or maybe arrived from somewhere else, wherever they'd come from, getting dressed in that enormous yellow raincoat, picking up the felt-tip pen, writing those 7 words in purple with her whole pressing hand. She had already done the thing. The note reaching him was almost beside the point. Priya had done the true thing the moment she decided to write it. Everything after that, the walk to the palace, the standing in the crowd, the leaning through the railing, that was just delivery. The act of love or kindness or whatever you want to call it. It was complete the moment she chose it. I thought about my sister. Her name was Rena. Renata, technically, but only her mother called her that, and only when she was in real trouble. She was 3 years older than me, which for most of our adult lives had meant she was 3 years further into everything. Marriage, mortgages, opinions about good wine, which I both resented and relied on in the specific way you do with older siblings who are also your best friends. She got sick in a way that doesn't give you a runway. 14 months from the first symptom to the end of it. 14 months is not nothing. It's also not enough for a single conversation I wanted to have, and I kept them in a folder in my head, those conversations labeled when she's stronger and when we're both less scared and when there's a right moment for this. The folder got heavier. The right moment did not arrive. And then there was no more time, and Rena left, and I still had the folder. I've been carrying it around for 7 months like my shoulder bag was stuffed with unpaid bills. Thank you for existing. 7 words. If I'd written that to Rena, not an explanation of why she mattered, not a careful articulation of what she meant to me, not the right words arranged in the right order, just that. 7 words in purple felt tip. Thank you for existing. You matter a lot. She would have laughed first. That's the other thing nobody tells you. How much you miss the laughing. She would have made a face and said something deflecting and slightly sarcastic because that's how we talk to each other. That was the register of us. But then she would have folded that paper and she would have kept it. I know she would have kept it. The amber light was fading. The park going blue at its edges. The pelicans on the lake were doing whatever pelicans do in November, which is apparently simply exist, enormous, and prehistoric, unconcerned. The man with the thermos on the nearby bench stood up, screwed the thermos cap back on, gave the lake one last look, and walked away. Same as every day I imagined. Same bench, same thermos, same lake, same leaving. Dina put her feet up on the bench, knees to her chest. "What are you going to do with the paper?" she said. I looked at it in my hands. "Keep it," I said. Yeah. She rested her chin on her knees. Why? I thought about it. The honest answer, not the tidy one. Because she did the thing that I didn't do, I said. And I want to remember that it's possible. That it's just possible. That you can write 7 words in purple felt tip and lean through a railing and leave them. That you don't need the right moment. That the moment is whenever you make it. Dina was quiet for a second. "You could still write it," she said. "To Rena, she's gone." Yeah. Pause. People write to the gone all the time. I looked at the lake, the blue coming in from the edges. I know. We left the park when it got properly dark. Back through the gate onto Birdcage Walk, the traffic returning, the realness of a city at 6 p.m., headlights, voices, the smell of someone's chips from a van somewhere. London continuing to be London, indifferent and electric and alive. I kept the note in my coat pocket. We went to dinner, a small Italian place near the hotel, red and white check tablecloths, candles and wine bottles, a waiter who called everyone my friend, and meant it. Pasta that tasted like someone's grandmother made it. Cheap red wine that wasn't trying to be good and therefore was exactly right. We talked about Rena. Actually talked. Not around her, not the careful sideways references I'd been managing for 7 months, but about her. Directly. The good stories. The embarrassing ones. The time she locked herself out of her own car twice in one afternoon, and called me crying, and then called me laughing within the same hour. The way she organized her bookshelves by color, which drove me crazy because I organized mine by author, and we had this argument for 20 years that was mostly just a reason talk. Dina ordered tiramisu. I ordered the same. The candle in the wine bottle burned low. At some point, I reached into my coat pocket and put the folded note on the table between us. The white paper. The purple felt tip impression visible through it. Dina looked at it. She had a name, I said. Priya. She put her name on it. I smoothed the edge of the paper. She wanted him to know who was saying it. That it came from a specific person. Not just someone. Priya. Age 8. Dina's eyes were bright in the candlelight. She blinked once, carefully. "I'm going to write something tonight," I said. To Rena. Not a letter, necessarily. Just something. Maybe just what Priya wrote, basically. Just the truth in the fewest words. I looked at the paper. I kept waiting to find the right language. The perfect language. Something that would, I don't know, be worthy of what I meant. And an 8-year-old used 7 words and purple felt tip, and it was the most complete thing I've seen in 7 months. We walked back to the hotel in the cold. The streets near Victoria were quiet at this hour, the tourist flow replaced by people coming home from things. Coats and briefcases. A woman walking a dog that had decided tonight was a night for investigating every lamppost at length. A group of teenagers outside a chicken shop, loud and happy and briefly young in the way that teenagers are, that specific temporary loudness that adults watch and remember. I had my hands in my pockets, one hand around the paper. "Do you think he knows?" I said. "The guard?" Yeah. Do you think he knows that in the middle of all of it? The tourists, the ceremony, the standing still for hours, the people trying to make him break. Do you think he knows that a little girl came on a specific Tuesday morning and left him a note saying thank you for existing? Dina considered this. Maybe not, she said. Maybe the note got swept up. Maybe no one found it. Maybe the palace has 1,000 notes left by visitors, and they go in a box somewhere, and no one ever reads them. Yeah, but Priya knows, Dina said. She knows she did it. We walked another half a block. That's the whole thing, isn't it? I said. It wasn't quite a question. Yeah, Dina said. That's the whole thing. Back in the room, the radiator had resumed its argument. The two beds still pushed too close together. The rain against the window, thin and consistent, a sound like someone very far away typing. I sat at the small desk near the window. Dina was already in bed, phone face down on her chest, pretending to be almost asleep in the way that gave me space. I took out my notebook. I don't write in it regularly. It's the kind of notebook that gets used when something needs to go somewhere outside my head. The paper is thick. The pen I found at the bottom of my bag was a ballpoint, blue ink, standard. Not purple, not felt tip, but it was there. I opened to a blank page. I wrote my sister's name at the top. Then I sat there for a while looking at it. The amber light was long gone. The city outside was dark and wet and going about its night. I thought about the guard in his sentry box. 300 years of ceremony. The train's stillness. The train's silence. The way that discipline can be a form of carrying. You put everything in it, and you carry it by standing perfectly still, and if you've practiced long enough, the standing itself becomes the holding. I thought about 7 words in purple felt tip on the inside of a railing. I thought about Priya leaning through with her arm out, saying the thing she'd come to say, not waiting, not calculating, just saying it, leaving it, walking away with her grandmother into the crowd. Then I wrote, not 7 words, more than 7, but not many more. The kind of thing that didn't need to be long. The kind of thing that was only its own failure if it tried to be more than what it was. I wrote until I got to the truth of it. Then I stopped. The next morning we went to Borough Market before heading to the airport. Dina ate half her body weight in cheese samples with completely no guilt. I bought a jar of honey from a man who talked about his bees the way people talk about their children, with that particular pride that is also a worry, that particular love that is also a responsibility. The sky over London was still gray. Still that dishcloth gray, stretched and tired. But the market was warm and loud and smelled of coffee and bread and something being cooked with rosemary somewhere, and people bumped into each other and apologized and laughed and moved on, and it was good to be in the middle of it. I had the paper in my pocket still. At the airport, waiting at the gate, I took it out one more time. Thank you for existing. You matter a lot. From Priya, age 8. I folded it back up. I thought about Priya wherever she was now. School, maybe some classroom, a Tuesday, a worksheet about fractions or capital cities or the water cycle, sitting at a desk with her uneven braids and her purple felt tip pens and the private knowledge that she had done a true thing on a morning when other people had just been tourists. I thought about the guard, wherever he was, probably in the barracks, off-duty, changed out of the red coat, in a chair with a cup of tea or a phone call, or whatever the actual life is that happens behind the ceremony. A human life, specific and small and real. A person who is a son to someone and maybe a brother, maybe a friend, maybe a reader of particular books or a follower of a specific football team. Maybe the person someone came home to, maybe the person who woke up at 3 a.m. with the ordinary dark weight of being alive. Existing. Just that. Existing. And an 8-year-old had thought that was worth a note. The gate opened. The line began to move. Dina was already at the front. She's always at the front. That's a Dina constant, waving me over. I put the note back in my pocket. I thought, I'm going to write to people I love, and I'm not going to wait for the right words, because the right words are apparently 7, pressed hard in purple felt tip by someone who hasn't learned yet that we're supposed to make things complicated. I thought, Rena knew. She must have known. But still, I was going to say it anyway. I was going to write it down and say without waiting for the moment to be right, because Priya, age 8, had just demonstrated clearly and with no room for argument that the moment is always now, and the railing is always there, and the arm reaches as far as it reaches, and you leave the note, and you walk away, and that's the thing that stays. Not the ceremony, not the uniform, not the grand gesture or the perfectly chosen moment. Just the note, the 7 words, the hand that pressed hard enough to leave an impression on the back. The willingness to say, you exist. That is the thing. That is all of it. That is enough. The plane lifted over London. The city from above, gray and wet and small and enormous. The Thames folding through it like something that had been there before any of this and would be there after. The palace somewhere in that grid of streets, white and cream-colored, flag flying, guards at their posts. I pressed my forehead against the window. Somewhere in that city, a piece of paper sat in a coat pocket or on a stone floor or in a lost and found box or on a desk in a barracks room. Or it had been thrown away. Or it had been kept. It didn't matter. Priya had written it. And I had read it. And that was already enough to change something.